On January 14, 2025, Pete Hegseth, nominated by President Donald Trump to be the next Secretary of Defense, faced a contentious confirmation hearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee. This hearing marked Hegseth's first public confrontation with senators regarding his nomination, and it became a focal point for discussions surrounding his controversial past statements and allegations of misconduct. Opening remarks. Hegseth's opening statement was emotional. He expressed gratitude to his wife Jennifer and highlighted the importance of faith in his life, stating, "All glory regardless of the outcome belongs to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." His remarks aimed to resonate with the audience on personal and moral grounds. Controversial past and allegations. The hearing quickly turned intense, particularly regarding Hegseth's previous comments about women and minority service members in the military. He had previously implied that women should not serve in combat roles and made remarks questioning the qualifications of black troops. During the hearing, he attempted to distance himself from these past statements, asserting it would be the privilege of a lifetime if confirmed to be the Secretary of Defense for all men and women in uniform. However, Senators Kirsten, Gillibrand and Joni Ernst pressed him on these issues, with Gillibrand asserting that his past comments were terrible and detrimental to military morale. She emphasized the necessity for Hegseth to change his views regarding women in combat roles if he were to effectively serve as Secretary of Defense. Allegations of sexual misconduct. Compounding the scrutiny were allegations of sexual misconduct stemming from a 2017 incident. Hegseth was accused of sexual assault at a Republican women's event, which he characterized as a coordinated smear campaign. He maintained that he was completely cleared and referred to the allegations as unfounded. When questioned about his alcohol consumption, Hegseth stated he would not drink on the job, a promise met with skepticism from some senators. Protesters disrupt hearing. The hearing was interrupted multiple times by protesters who voiced their dissent against Hegseth's nomination, criticizing his record on veterans issues and his stance on military engagements. Capitol Police swiftly removed the demonstrators, but their presence underscored significant public discontent regarding Hegseth's candidacy. The debate on standards in the military. The issue of military standards also came to the forefront. Hegseth argued that standards should remain high for all service members and suggested that there had been a lowering of standards to meet diversity quotas. This assertion drew criticism from senators who demanded specific examples of how standards had been compromised. Many senators, including Jack Reed and Tammy Duckworth, questioned Hegseth's qualifications to lead the Department of Defense, emphasizing the importance of character and competence in such a significant role. Support from Republican senators. Despite the fierce criticism from Democrats, Hegseth received support from several Republican senators who argued that his combat experience and outsider status could bring necessary change to the Pentagon. Senator Roger Wicker praised Hegseth's unconventional background, likening him to Trump, suggesting that his lack of traditional political experience might actually be an asset in the current climate. Conclusion of hearing. As the hearing wrapped up, Hegseth was visibly emotional, hugging his wife and receiving support from allies in the room. The Senate Armed Services Committee has yet to vote on his nomination, and the outcome remains uncertain given the polarized opinions surrounding his candidacy. This event highlighted the deep divisions in American politics regarding military leadership and the values that should guide the Department of Defense. In summary, Hegseth's confirmation hearing was marked by passionate exchanges over his past statements, allegations of misconduct, and differing views on military standards, reflecting the broader national discourse on these critical issues. The confirmation hearing of Pete Hegseth for the position of Secretary of Defense on January 14, 2025 was a contentious event marked by intense questioning, protests, and significant discourse surrounding Hegseth's past comments and behavior. Below are the counterintuitive points of interest that emerged from the hearings and related discussions. 1. Public sentiment on experience versus background. While many Americans traditionally favor candidates with extensive government experience, a notable portion of the public expressed a preference for someone like Hegseth who lacks conventional political experience but has military background. This indicates a shift in some voters' perception that operational military experience may be as valuable, if not more so, than political acumen in leadership roles within the Defense Department. 2. Claims of unconventional leadership. Hegseth's supporters lauded his unconventional nomination, suggesting that being outside the political establishment could be beneficial. This contrasts sharply with the historical precedent of appointing seasoned military leaders or experienced politicians to such significant roles. The framing of his nomination as a necessary departure from the norm is counterintuitive, as it implies that traditional qualifications are less relevant in contemporary political contexts. 3. Redemption narrative. Hegseth's assertion that he is not a perfect person and that redemption is real plays into a broader narrative that individuals with controversial pasts can still be effective leaders. This is counter to the common expectation that public officials should maintain a clean record, highlighting a societal shift toward accepting flawed candidates based on their potential for growth and change. 4. Diversity versus meritocracy debate. Hegseth's comments regarding the military's diversity initiatives suggest that he believes these programs compromise standards. This perspective is counterintuitive to the broader understanding that diversity can enhance organizational effectiveness, particularly in military contexts where diverse perspectives can lead to better decision-making and operational outcomes. The tension between advocating for meritocracy while simultaneously questioning the qualifications of women and minority service members raises complex questions about the definition of merit in today's military. 5. Protests and public discourse. The protests during Hegseth's hearing were not just random acts of dissent. They reflected deep frustrations about the military's direction and the treatment of veterans. The juxtaposition of Hegseth's military advocacy against the backdrop of protests highlighting veteran suicide and homelessness signifies a disconnect between the views of some lawmakers and the lived experiences of veterans. This counterintuitive relationship suggests that political rhetoric does not always align with the realities faced by those in service. 6. Combat experience versus leadership capability. Hegseth's argument that his combat experience qualifies him for leadership is challenged by the fact that previous secretaries of defense have also had extensive combat backgrounds. The notion that being a warrior automatically translates to effective leadership in a multifaceted role like Secretary of Defense is counterintuitive, as it overlooks the complexities of managing a vast bureaucracy and making nuanced policy decisions. 7. Questioning of standards. The repeated questioning of whether Hegseth's nomination would lower standards for the Secretary of Defense role contrasts with his claims that military standards for women have been lowered. This paradox highlights a broader conversation about the definition of standards in both military service and leadership roles, suggesting that perceptions of competency and qualification are often subjective and context-dependent. 8. Character and competence issues. The focus on Hegseth's character and past indiscretions during the hearing was more pronounced than in previous hearings for other defense nominees. This suggests a growing expectation that leaders in sensitive positions must not only demonstrate professional competence but also possess a moral character that aligns with the values of service members. This shift emphasizes the evolving landscape of political accountability and the influence of personal conduct on public perception. 9. Public perception of military leadership. Hegseth's claim that the military is one of the least racist institutions runs counter to ongoing discussions about systemic racism within the military and society. This assertion reflects a broader reluctance among some leaders to acknowledge and address issues of race and discrimination, potentially alienating segments of the military and the public who view these problems as critical to the integrity of the armed forces. 10. Emotional appeals versus professionalism. Hegseth's emotional appeals during his opening statement, thanking his family and invoking religious faith, were juxtaposed against the formal nature of the confirmation process. This blending of personal narrative with political discourse is counterintuitive in a context where professionalism and decorum are typically emphasized, reflecting a shift toward more personal engagement in political dialogues. In conclusion, the confirmation hearing for Pete Hegseth encapsulated various counterintuitive themes that challenge traditional perceptions of military leadership qualifications and the intersection of personal conduct and public service. These dynamics highlight the complexities of contemporary political discourse and the evolving expectations of leaders in significant government roles. In the recent confirmation hearing for Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, several important but often overlooked aspects emerged that warrant further examination. While much of the coverage has focused on the controversies surrounding Hegseth's past comments about women and minorities in the military along with allegations of personal misconduct, there are deeper implications and nuances that merit attention. 1. Cultural shift in military leadership. One of the significant themes in the hearing was Hegseth's assertion of a need to restore a warrior culture within the Pentagon. This phrase is not merely a call for traditional military values. It signals a broader ideological shift towards a more aggressive, less accommodating military ethos. The emphasis on meritocracy and high standards, while ostensibly positive, could lead to the marginalization of diversity initiatives that have been crucial in fostering an inclusive environment. Hegseth's framing of diversity equity. An inclusion DEI as divisive could be interpreted as a rejection of the progress made in integrating women and minorities into military roles. This perspective is significant because it reflects a possible rollback of policies aimed at creating a more representative military, which could have long-term effects on unit cohesion and effectiveness. 2. The role of personal conduct in leadership. Hegseth's personal conduct, particularly the allegations of sexual misconduct and excessive drinking, was a focal point of questioning during the hearing. However, the broader implications of these issues were somewhat overshadowed by the immediate controversies. The military has a strict code of conduct, and Hegseth's past actions raise questions about accountability and the standards to which military leaders are held. If confirmed, Hegseth would need to enforce discipline among service members who might face repercussions for similar behaviors he has exhibited. This duality presents a significant challenge. How can he command respect and authority if his past actions do not align with the conduct expected of those in uniform? This inconsistency could undermine morale and trust within the ranks. 3. Impact of public perception on military policies. The intense public scrutiny that Hegseth faced during the hearing illustrates the increasing importance of public perception in military leadership. Hegseth's remarks about women in combat roles and racial minorities were met with not just bipartisan questioning but also public protests, which highlight a growing demand for accountability and ethical leadership in military appointments. The reaction to Hegseth's nomination suggests that the military is no longer perceived solely as an institution of defense but as a societal entity that must adhere to evolving standards of equality and justice. This shift in public sentiment could influence how future military policies are formulated and implemented. 4. Political polarization and military leadership. The confirmation hearing took place in a highly polarized political environment, with Republicans supporting Hegseth's nomination largely based on his military experience and supposed alignment with Trump-era policies, while Democrats voiced concerns about his past comments and character. This divide reflects a broader trend in which military leadership is increasingly viewed through a partisan lens. The implications of this polarization are profound, as it may hinder bipartisan cooperation on defense policies and military readiness if future leaders are seen as politically aligned rather than focused on the security and operational effectiveness of the armed forces. The potential for a military that is perceived as political could have detrimental effects on its cohesion and nonpartisan nature. 5. The future of military recruitment and retention. Hegseth's comments regarding recruitment and retention were significant but perhaps not fully explored in the context of his past statements on diversity. By suggesting that current DEI initiatives detract from the military's effectiveness, he may inadvertently dissuade potential recruits who value inclusivity and representation. The military is facing challenges in recruitment, particularly among younger generations who prioritize social justice and equity. If policies shift away from inclusivity under Hegseth's leadership, the military may struggle to attract a diverse pool of candidates, ultimately affecting its operational readiness and effectiveness. Conclusion. While the confirmation hearing for Pete Hegseth was marked by controversy and debate over personal conduct and past statements, the broader implications of his nomination extend far beyond individual issues. The potential cultural shift towards a more traditional military ethos, the challenges of maintaining accountability among leaders, and the impact of political polarization on military effectiveness are all critical considerations that merit deeper examination. As the military navigates these complex waters, the choices made now will reverberate through its ranks, affecting everything from leadership to recruitment and retention in the years to come. 1. Controversial views on women and diversity in the military. Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing highlighted significant concerns regarding his past comments about the roles of women and black service members in the military. His previous statements suggesting that women should not serve in combat roles and implying that some black troops may not be qualified drew sharp criticism from several senators, particularly those with military experience such as Senators Kirsten, Gillibrand and Joni Ernst. Hegseth attempted to walk back his earlier remarks by emphasizing the need for high standards in military service. But many senators expressed skepticism about his commitment to genuinely supporting diversity and inclusion. This point underscores the broader debate within the military and society about how to balance standards with the need for representation and equality in service. 2. Allegations of misconduct and character issues. Hegseth faced intense scrutiny over allegations of sexual misconduct, excessive drinking, and personal conduct that some senators argued disqualified him from a leadership position in the Defense Department. Despite his claims of being a changed man and delving into themes of redemption, the lack of a robust response to these allegations raised questions about his character and ability to lead effectively. The hearing reflected a divide in how character and past behavior are weighed in political appointments, particularly in the context of military leadership where integrity and conduct are paramount. 3. Public response and protests. The confirmation hearing was marked by interruptions from protesters, which highlighted public dissatisfaction with Hegseth's nomination. These protests were not only tied to his controversial views but also addressed broader issues related to veterans' rights and military engagement in foreign conflicts. The protesters' demands emphasizing the mental health crisis among veterans and the implications of military actions abroad introduced a critical dimension to the hearing, framing Hegseth's appointment within the context of ongoing struggles faced by service members and their families. 4. Political divisions and support dynamics. Hegseth's nomination illustrated the polarized political environment surrounding military leadership appointments. While he received backing from some Republican senators who praised his military service and perceived need for a warrior culture in the Pentagon, Democratic senators raised serious concerns about his qualifications and past conduct. The hearing served as a microcosm of the broader ideological battle over military policy, particularly in relation to diversity, meritocracy, and the influence of woke culture. This dynamic reflects how the selection of military leaders is increasingly becoming a battleground for broader cultural and political debates in the U.S. Here are 3 famous historical cases that are similar in nature to Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing, where significant controversies, character assessments, and public protests played pivotal roles. 1. John Bolton's confirmation as UN Ambassador, 2005. John Bolton, nominated by President George W. Bush as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, faced significant opposition during his confirmation process. Critics raised concerns about his temperament, past comments regarding the UN, and allegations of bullying colleagues in the State Department. The hearing was marked by contentious exchanges and a divided Senate, with many Democrats and some moderate Republicans voicing their objections. Ultimately, Bolton was appointed through a recess appointment after the Senate failed to confirm him, highlighting deep partisan divisions and the contentious nature of his nomination. 2. Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation 2018. The confirmation process for Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was one of the most contentious in history. Kavanaugh faced multiple allegations of sexual misconduct dating back to his high school and college years, which he vehemently denied. The hearings included dramatic testimony from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who accused Kavanaugh of assaulting her when they were teenagers. The confirmation process saw intense protests, emotional testimonies, and significant media coverage reflecting broader societal debates about sexual assault and the credibility of survivors. Despite the controversy, Kavanaugh was confirmed by a narrow Senate vote, underscoring the polarized political climate. 3. Jeff Sessions Attorney General confirmation 2017. Jeff Sessions, nominated by President Donald Trump to be Attorney General, encountered fierce resistance during his confirmation hearing. As a former senator from Alabama, Sessions faced scrutiny over his past remarks on race, immigration, and civil rights, with critics arguing that his views were out of step with the values of the Justice Department. The hearing was marked by protests both inside and outside the Senate chamber, with activists condemning Sessions' nomination due to his perceived hostility towards civil rights. Despite the protests and opposition from numerous civil rights organizations, Sessions was confirmed, reflecting the contentious nature of his nomination and the deep divisions in American politics regarding issues of race and justice. These cases illustrate the complexities and high stakes involved in confirmation hearings for key government positions, particularly when personal conduct, public opinion, and political beliefs intersect. In the wake of Pete Hegseth's tumultuous confirmation hearing for the position of Secretary of Defense, the future outlook presents several critical predictions and implications for both Hegseth's leadership and the broader landscape of U.S. defense policy. 1. Potential confirmation dynamics. Hegseth's confirmation process is expected to be contentious, with a razor-thin margin of support and opposition among senators. If confirmed, his leadership style may lean towards a combative and unapologetic approach, mirroring the sentiments expressed during his hearing. This could lead to increased polarization within the Senate, particularly if further allegations surface or if Hegseth's past actions and statements continue to be scrutinized. Conversely, if he is not confirmed, it may signal a shift in the Senate's willingness to endorse controversial nominees, especially those with significant personal baggage. 2. Impact on military culture and diversity initiatives. Hegseth's previously stated views on women and minorities in the military will likely shape his policies and initiatives if confirmed. His emphasis on maintaining high standards while questioning existing diversity practices could lead to a rollback of recent gains in military inclusivity. This may alienate certain demographics within the armed forces, potentially impacting recruitment and retention efforts, particularly among women and minorities who have seen improvements in opportunities over the past few years. 3. Shift in defense strategy. Under Hegseth, the Department of Defense may adopt a more aggressive stance towards global military engagements, reflecting Trump's nationalistic and combative foreign policy vision. Hegseth's prioritization of a warrior culture indicates a potential pivot back to traditional military values, which could result in an increased focus on combat readiness over diplomatic engagement. This could also lead to heightened tensions in international relations, especially with allies who may perceive a shift away from collaborative defense strategies. 4. Response to domestic issues within the military. Hegseth's handling of issues like sexual assault and veteran suicide will be critical. His commitment to appointing a senior official dedicated to preventing sexual assault indicates a recognition of these pressing concerns. However, the efficacy of such measures will depend on his ability to implement meaningful change and garner support from both military leadership and the rank and file. Failure to adequately address these issues could result in continued public outcry and a loss of trust among service members. 5. Public perception and media scrutiny. given Hegseth's controversial past and the nature of his confirmation hearing. Media scrutiny will likely remain high. Public perception of his leadership will be shaped by how he navigates his role and addresses ongoing controversies. His ability to communicate effectively and project a positive image will be crucial in maintaining support from both the public and members of Congress. Any missteps could lead to a rapid decline in confidence both in his capabilities and in the administration's choices. 6. Legislative challenges and collaborations. Hegseth's tenure may be marked by significant legislative challenges, particularly as he seeks to implement policies that align with his vision of a more militarized and less politically correct Pentagon. Collaborating with a divided Congress will require strategic negotiation and coalition building, especially with key figures in both parties. His effectiveness in this area will determine his ability to push through reforms and funding initiatives essential for military readiness. 7. Long-term implications for defense leadership. Hegseth's confirmation could set a precedent for future defense secretaries, particularly if his tenure is characterized by a disregard for traditional norms of military leadership and integrity. This may embolden similar candidates in the future, altering the landscape of defense leadership in the U.S. for years to come. The long-term implications could include a shift towards more ideologically driven appointments, impacting the professionalization of military leadership and the apolitical nature of the U.S. Armed Forces. Conclusion. As the confirmation process unfolds and Hegseth potentially steps into the role of Secretary of Defense, the implications of his leadership style, policies, and public perception will play a significant role in shaping the future of U.S. military policy and culture. The coming months will be critical in determining not only Hegseth's legacy but also the broader trajectory of the Department of Defense in an increasingly complex global landscape.